Finally, we know. Here's when the real estate market will crash. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. We are part of the Hatch Homes Group and it's our Monday housing market update. Remember to like and subscribe if you're enjoying what you're listening to. So the market crash, everyone is telling us that people come up to us all the time. Oh, I hear the market's going to crash. So we think that we have pinpointed exactly when it happened. So I think you may have missed it.
Absolutely. If you peek at this here, we think that in the fall of 2023, when interest rates got to about 8%, is when the crash happened. Not so much a crash as it is a market correction. We kind of did have a lot of, room to lose a little bit. So it's not really exactly the crash people had been waiting for or hoping for. And on that note, I'm not exactly sure why people seem to want a crash. I think that maybe they feel like they're going to be able to get some big opportunity, but I don't think people often think about what that means if a housing crash happened, that there's probably a lot of other things going on in the economy and in people's lives that could prevent you even from being able to get a home.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, the like we don't want a market crash. Like it's not just about getting a lower priced house. That I mean, when we had a market crash, it was terrible for the economy. It was terrible for so many things. People lost their jobs. I mean, it was an awful time. So let's not be like hoping and rooting for that crash. And we're often like, why do we see these articles all the time? It's really not articles, it's really just headlines. Market's going to crash. And or why are people saying that? And we think it's just, there's a lot of trauma from that market crash, right? It caused a lot of people a ton of pain, losing their houses. I mean, it was truly awful. And so I think that there's something that is in people that's like almost a protective measure of like, oh, I'm going to protect myself and just say, oh, like I'm not going to invest in real estate because another crash is going to come. And I don't think that we could like talk enough about how the market indicators are so different now than they were then. But just let's look really quick on just lending standards. If you just want to look at one thing that's really different, anyone was getting a loan back then. It is so different now. And so just protecting the lending standards has been huge. Even, like it during when COVID hit and we were like, oh my gosh, there's going to be a flood of foreclosures because no one's going to be able to afford their home. Well, that's what happened in the crash, right? But now we have forbearance and a lot of people in forbearance and they were okay. They got out of it. So there's so many different things happening right now than were happening back then. And
Right?
yeah,
Oops, sorry. What were you saying?
no, I was saying the market was really saturated, right? And then you're just driving prices down. So the other huge, huge major thing is supply and demand right now is a big issue. So like where are we going to get these saturated? Like where are all the listings going to come from to saturate the market to put prices down? If
Absolutely. And I think I
sorry,
think people
if
usually come from
8% didn't do it, that is a big indicator right there too.
yeah, in the like as exactly as you said, 8% didn't do it. And if interest rates were still climbing, if they were all projected to be going up through the year, it could be a little bit of a different story on
Yeah.
prices, but prices remained relatively flatlined in most areas through that and held a lot of value. And I think people either bring up the crash from a couple different ways. Either come from curiosity and be like, oh, I heard there's going to be a crash, and have like a, silent kind of question mark on that to kind of see what we're going to say and to maybe get some reassurance or just to get another input. And then there's the people who are really, they truly like the crash is coming. And it's often a lot of imagined scenarios that we could all do. Aliens could come and then we don't need houses anymore and something like that, but they always come up with fake scenarios. So like, oh, whether it's the Airbnb, forbearance and foreclosures, and there's just not the data for it. There's not the data for those things flooding the market. I've even heard like, oh, all these commercial buildings, they're going to convert those into housing, and then there's not going to be a need for as much housing. So I could really mess up prices in the next 5 to 10 years. Like, all these things are fake imagined scenarios. And so what we can really do is make data driven decisions on that kind of on your life, make a data driven decision. So this depends on, I guess, what kind of person you are, if you're looking for solutions or if you're kind of looking to do some fear mongering.
Well, and if you look at a lot of those articles, because we do ask people to send us articles that they find. And when you look at the articles, the headlines are very scary, but when you're actually reading the article, you're like, I'm not seeing the data here. Like I'm not
Yeah.
seeing the true argument. And quite frankly, you know, when all those things have come up, like, oh, the foreclosures are gonna flood the market, things like that, we're like, we welcome inventory. We're very low inventory. We have very high demand. So like we
And
could absorb the inventory at this point. It would really have to be something catastrophic that
yeah,
would crash it.
exactly. And again, if someone went into forbearance or in the process of foreclosure, it's not like the next day they're getting foreclosed on after they miss their payment. It's a process. And the reality is most people have a ton of equity. And so there would be room to, as long as they were working with professional, there could be room to get out of that
Yeah.
situation.
I think that's a
As
huge important
yes,
point.
yes, a very important point. So please send us your reasons, send us your articles on why you feel like the market might crash or why you think it's going to. Comment below why you think it's going to crash, and we can have that discussion.
Thanks so much. Remember to like and subscribe.